One of the beautiful things in the life of George Fox is that theme that we've worked on in this last session, hearing God as a life, and this life. And he had the experience where he was seeking God and not finding, kept seeking, not finding. And then finally he had that well-known experience where he says, when all my hopes in them and in everyone were gone, so that I had nothing outward to help me, nor could I tell what to do. Oh, then I heard a voice which said, there is one, even Christ Jesus, that can speak to thy condition. And when I heard it, my heart did leap for joy. And then he adds, and this I knew experientially.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the great key to Fox's life and to the power of the Quakers, was that, as he also said, I'm taking people off of men and putting them onto Christ. Right. And Christ as the inner light was something that he experienced constantly. And it manifested itself, of course, in various ways. But when you were quiet as a Quaker, you were waiting to hear the voice of God. And the quietness was not, as is sometimes mistaken today, it wasn't just for its own sake, but to give you a chance to hear from God so you could speak to the meeting.
Right. And it always had that corporate sense of us together, listening together. I sat once in the meeting house where Fox was. It was a meeting house that was actually built out of the lumber of the Mayflower.
Okay.
And I spent about, when it was decommissioned, they took the wood and they built, and you could see the timbers and some of the names carved in. And I spent maybe 4 hours just sitting various places and wondering, what it would have been like when they gathered. And it was very tender because there was a sense that God was with us together, and we could depend and listen to one another.
And you don't have to be in the steeple house?
You don't have to be in the steeple house.
No, and I think part of what's so resonant in it is when he says, one who could speak to my condition.
Yeah, right.
And, no matter how religious or irreligious folks become, we want Dr. Phil, we want somebody who can speak to our condition.
Yes, exactly.
And so often we don't even think of ourselves as having a condition until somebody says it. And that's what Jesus does, is he speaks
That's right.
to our condition.
Now, that has so many dimensions in this particular tradition. One is that Fox trained his friends when they were being persecuted and badly treated, that they would address Christ in the person who was mistreating them. And one of the most powerful things in his teaching was that there's going to be Christ there. There will be Christ there. This scares many evangelicals because they, well, you mean they're all going to go to heaven? Well, that was not something.
That wasn't the issue.
That wasn't
really.
the issue. That whatever happens to them, every person has the light of Christ in them, because he is the light that lights everyone that comes into the world. And that just changes the whole picture of human relationships when you think that,
Another experience he had that I found very interesting was great temptations and what he learned from that. And it also led him to studying the Bible, essentially studying all the sins of everybody. And he said he wondered why he went through this experience. And then he writes, the Lord answered that it was needful I should have a sense of all conditions. How else should I speak to all conditions? And in this, I saw the infinite love of God. And then he writes this, it's so beautiful. I saw also that there was an ocean of darkness and death, but an infinite ocean of light and love, which flowed over the ocean of darkness.
And that's lovely. He was so conscious of that. You remember the scene where he's sitting by the fire and it comes over him that all things come by nature. And he sits for a while in a kind of depression with that thought. And then the word comes to him, there is a God who is over nature. And that sense of the greatness of the kingdom and how it encompasses everything. And of course, he and his friends took that into all of their lives, and they sanctified everything they touched.